The night Dean almost walked away. A smoky nightclub in Cleveland, Ohio, February 14th, 1946. Dean Martin, 28 years old, stood backstage at the Holland Inn Hotel watching Jerry Lewis destroy the room with physical comedy. Dean had $11 in his pocket, a wife and baby at home, and a sinking feeling that his singing career was going nowhere. In 90 seconds, he'd have to follow this manic 19-year-old kid on stage, and in 90 seconds, everything he thought about his future was about to change. To understand why this moment was so significant, you need to understand where Dean Martin was in February 1946. He wasn't Dean Martin yet. He was still Dino Crosetti, a former boxer and card dealer from Steubenville, Ohio, who'd been grinding in nightclubs for 7 years, singing for crowds who talked through his sets, getting paid $75 a week when he was lucky, sending most of it home to his wife Betty and their baby Craig. Dean had the voice, everyone said so, smooth as bourbon, warm as midnight. But in 1946, having a great voice wasn't enough. Frank Sinatra had the voice and the screaming Bobby Soxers. Bing Crosby had the voice and the movies. Dean Martin had the voice and nothing else. He'd been touring the Midwest circuit for months, the same clubs, the same songs, the same polite applause from crowds more interested in their drinks than his singing. He was exhausted, homesick, starting to wonder if he should give up, go back to Steubenville, maybe open a barber shop like his father wanted. That's when he met Jerry Lewis. Jerry was 19, impossibly young, impossibly energetic. He did a comedy act that involved destroying the stage, lip-syncing to records while making faces, falling over furniture, pulling props from everywhere. The crowds loved him, the club owners loved him, and Jerry, for reasons Dean couldn't understand, wanted to be friends. They'd been booked at the Holland Inn Hotel for 2 weeks, separate acts. Dean would sing, Jerry would do comedy, professional and simple. But Jerry kept hanging around Dean's dressing room, talking non-stop, doing impressions, making Dean laugh despite himself. And one night, Jerry said something that stuck. "You know what your problem is, Dean? You're too serious. You got a great voice, but you sing like you're at a funeral. People want to have fun. You got to give 'em fun." Dean didn't know how to respond to that. He was a singer. Singers sang seriously. That's how it worked. February 14th, Valentine's Day. The club was packed. Jerry went on first and absolutely demolished. Physical comedy, voices, chaos. The audience was screaming with laughter, standing ovation. Dean stood backstage, watching, feeling his stomach drop. How was he supposed to follow that? Jerry came off stage, drenched in sweat, grinning. "You're up, Pally. Go kill 'em." Dean walked on stage. The applause died down quickly. He started singing "Oh Marie," one of his standards, nice and smooth, professional. The audience was still laughing from Jerry's act, talking, not paying attention. Dean felt it happening, the same thing that happened every night. He was background music, wallpaper. He finished the song, polite applause. He was about to start his second number when Jerry walked back on stage unannounced, carrying a busboy's tray, pretending to serve drinks while Dean sang. The audience started laughing. Dean stopped singing. "What are you doing?" Dean asked. "I work here," Jerry said in a ridiculous voice. "I'm serving cocktails. You keep singing, handsome." The audience loved it. Dean could have walked off, could have been angry. This was his set, his moment, his career. But something happened, something Dean had never allowed himself to do on stage. He played along. "Well, bring me one too," Dean said. "I need a drink dealing with you." The audience roared. Jerry pretended to pour a drink, spilled it on himself. Dean kept singing, but now he was reacting to Jerry, making fun of him, the song becoming secondary to the chaos. For the next 15 minutes, they improvised. Dean sang, Jerry interrupted. Dean insulted Jerry. Jerry fell over furniture. The audience couldn't breathe from laughter. When they finally finished, the standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Backstage, the club owner grabbed both of them. "Whatever that was, do it again tomorrow night, same time. I'll pay you both double." Dean looked at Jerry. Jerry grinned. "So, what do you say, Pally? Want to be a team?" Dean Martin had spent 7 years trying to be the next Sinatra. Serious, smooth, sophisticated. In 15 minutes, Jerry Lewis showed him he could be something different, something new, something fun. "Yeah," Dean said, "let's try it." That was February 1946. By July, they were Martin and Lewis, booked solid across the country. By 1948, they had a radio show. By 1949, they were movie stars. By 1951, they were the biggest comedy team in America, making $25,000 a week. All because Dean Martin stopped taking himself so seriously. But here's what most people don't know. In 1956, after 10 years together, the partnership ended badly. They split up in anger, didn't speak for 20 years. In 1976, their friend Frank Sinatra reunited them on stage at a telethon. Neither Dean nor Jerry knew it was happening. Frank literally surprised them. Dean walked out. Jerry was already on stage. They saw each other for the first time in 20 decades. The audience grew silent. Then Dean smiled, that same easy smile from 1946. "So, you working as a busboy again or what?" Jerry laughed, that same manic energy. "Yeah, and you're still singing too slow, Pally." And just like that, 20 years of silence melted away. Not completely, they never became best friends again, but they found peace.
Because they both understood something that night in Cleveland taught them. Success isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to take risks, to be vulnerable, to let someone else make you better than you could be alone. Dean Martin walked onto that stage in 1946 expecting to be a solo singer. He walked off as half of the biggest comedy team in America, not because he had a plan, but because he was willing to let someone change his plan. That's the real lesson. The best things in life happen when you stop trying to control everything and start saying yes to the chaos. Even if that chaos comes from a 19-year-old kid with a busboy's tray. The night Dean almost walked away. A smoky nightclub in Cleveland, Ohio. February 14th, 1946. Dean Martin, 28 years old, stood backstage at the Hollenden Hotel watching Jerry Lewis destroy the room with physical comedy. Dean had $11 in his pocket, a wife and baby at home in Cleveland, and a sinking feeling that his singing career was going nowhere fast. The stage manager tapped his shoulder. "You're up in 90 seconds, Dean." 90 seconds. Dean smoothed down his borrowed tuxedo jacket, 2 sizes too big, courtesy of another performer who'd taken pity on him. 90 seconds until he'd have to follow this manic 19-year-old kid who had the audience screaming with laughter. 90 seconds until he'd prove, once again, that having a great voice wasn't enough in 1946. In those 90 seconds, Dean made a decision. This was it, his last shot. If tonight didn't work, he was done. He'd go back to Steubenville, open that barber shop his father kept talking about, admit that Dino Crescetti, the blackjack dealer, had no business trying to be Dean Martin, the singer. He had no idea that in the next 15 minutes, everything would change, that a split-second choice would create the biggest comedy partnership in American history, and that 30 years later, the fallout from that same partnership would nearly destroy him. To understand why this moment was so significant, you need to understand where Dean Martin was in February 1946. He wasn't Dean Martin yet, not really. He was still Dino Cressetti from Steubenville, Ohio, a steel town where most men worked the mills and nobody became famous. Dean's father owned a barber shop. Dean had worked there as a kid, sweeping hair, running errands, listening to Italian opera on the radio while his father cut hair and complained about ungrateful sons who wanted to be singers instead of barbers. Dean had left Steubenville in 1939, 7 years earlier. He was 21 years old, had been a welterweight boxer, knocked out in the 12th round of his last fight, and decided singing was safer than getting punched in the face for $10 a night. He'd changed his name from Dino Cressetti to Dean Martin because nightclub owners didn't want Italian names on their marquees in 1939. 7 years of grinding. 7 years of driving between Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, Pittsburgh. Small clubs with smaller crowds, piano bars where people talked through his entire set, mafia joints where he sang while men in the back made deals and occasionally shot each other. 7 years of $50 weeks, $75 weeks when he was lucky, sending most of it home to his wife Betty and their baby boy Craig. Dean had the voice, everyone said so. Smooth as bourbon, warm as midnight, effortless in a way that made other singers jealous. But in 1946, having a great voice wasn't enough. Frank Sinatra had the voice and the screaming Bobby Soxers and the movie contracts. Bing Crosby had the voice and the radio show and the money. Dean Martin had the voice and an $11 bankroll and a growing suspicion that he'd wasted 7 years chasing something impossible. He was exhausted, homesick. The endless circuit of nightclubs was wearing him down. Same songs every night. Oh Marie, Santa Lucia, I'll be seeing you. Nice and smooth and professional. The audiences were polite. They clapped. They went back to their drinks. Nobody screamed for Dean Martin. That's when he met Jerry Lewis. The Holland Hotel in Cleveland had booked them both for a 2-week run in February 1946. Separate acts. Dean would sing, Jerry would do comedy, professional and simple. Jerry Lewis was 19 years old, impossibly young, impossibly energetic, impossibly annoying. He did a comedy act that involved lip-syncing to records while making insane faces, falling over furniture, pulling props from seemingly nowhere, destroying whatever stage he was on. The crowds loved him. The club owners loved him. Jerry was going places. And Jerry, for reasons Dean couldn't understand, wanted to be friends. Jerry kept hanging around Dean's dressing room between sets, talking non-stop, doing impressions of everyone, the stage manager, the bartender, Dean himself, making Dean laugh despite himself. Dean tried to keep his distance. He was 28, a professional, a married man with responsibilities. Jerry was a kid who acted like the world was one big playground. But Jerry was persistent, and one night after Dean had done his set to another round of polite, forgettable applause, Jerry said something that stuck. You know what your problem is, Dean? You're too serious. You got a great voice, maybe the best I've ever heard, but you sing like you're at a funeral, like you're apologizing for bothering people. You gotta loosen up. People don't just want to hear music, they want to have fun. You gotta give them fun. Dean stared at him. I'm a singer, kid. I sing. That's the job. Yeah, but it's boring, Jerry said, not meanly, just honest. You're boring them to death with that beautiful voice. What a waste. Dean should have been offended, should have told this 19-year-old punk to mind his own business, but something about it rang true. Dean had been playing it safe for 7 years, being professional, following the rules, and it had gotten him exactly nowhere. February 14th, 1946, Valentine's Day. The Holland Hotel was packed. couples celebrating, drinking, looking for a good time. Jerry went on first at 9 p.m. and absolutely demolished. Dean watched from backstage. Jerry did his record act, lip-syncing to opera while making faces, then switching to a jazz record while pretending to play invisible instruments. He fell over a chair, knocked over a prop table, pretended to be drunk, then pretended to be the conductor, then pretended to be 3 different people having a conversation. The audience was screaming with laughter. Women were crying. Men were slapping tables. Standing ovation. 3 minutes of applause. Jerry came off stage drenched in sweat, grinning like a maniac.
"You're up, Pally. Go kill him." Dean's stomach dropped. How was he supposed to follow that? He walked on stage. The applause died down quickly. He nodded to the piano player, a guy named Lou who'd been backing him all week. They started "Oh Marie," one of Dean's standards. Nice and smooth. Professional. Dean sang the opening verse. His voice was perfect, warm, controlled. But the audience was still buzzing from Jerry's act, talking, laughing at jokes that were already over, not paying attention to the handsome guy in the borrowed tuxedo singing an Italian love song. Dean felt it happening. The same thing that happened every night in every club. He was becoming background music, wallpaper, pleasant but forgettable. He finished the first verse, polite applause. A few people looked up from their drinks. Most didn't. Dean started the second verse. His voice was still perfect, still smooth, still completely wasted on a crowd that didn't care. He was about to finish the song when something happened that changed his life. Jerry Lewis walked back on stage unannounced, carrying a busboy's tray loaded with empty glasses, pretending to serve drinks while Dean sang. The audience started laughing immediately. Dean stopped singing. The piano player stopped playing. Dean stared at Jerry. "What are you doing?" Dean asked, genuinely confused. "I work here," Jerry said in a ridiculous high-pitched voice. "I'm a busboy. I'm serving cocktails. You keep singing, handsome. Don't mind me." The audience roared. Dean looked at Jerry, looked at the audience, looked back at Jerry. This was his set, his moment, his career. Jerry was ruining it. Or was he? For 7 years, Dean had played it safe, professional, serious, and it had gotten him nowhere. He had $11 in his pocket and a borrowed tuxedo, and absolutely nothing to lose. So Dean did something he never allowed himself to do on stage. He played along. "Well, if you're serving drinks," Dean said, staying in character, "bring me one too. I need a drink dealing with you." The audience exploded. Jerry pretended to pour a drink from an empty bottle, made a big show of it, then pretended to drink it himself. Dean started singing again, but now he was reacting to Jerry, making comments, the song becoming secondary to the chaos. Jerry spilled the imaginary drink on himself. Dean stopped singing. "You're supposed to be a busboy, not a slob." "I'm new," Jerry whined. "It's my first day." "It's your last day if you keep interrupting my song," Dean shot back. The audience couldn't breathe. They were laughing so hard people were doubled over. Jerry fell over the tray. Dean kept singing, but now he was stepping over Jerry, making fun of him, treating the whole situation like Jerry was the world's most incompetent busboy who happened to be ruining a perfectly good romantic ballad. Lou, the piano player, kept playing through all of it. He'd been a professional long enough to know when magic was happening. For the next 15 minutes, they improvised. Dean would start singing, Jerry would interrupt with some insane bit of physical comedy, Dean would insult Jerry, Jerry would fall over furniture, Dean would step over him and keep singing like nothing was happening. The contrast, Dean's smooth, unflappable cool versus Jerry's manic energy, was electric. The audience was screaming, not polite applause, real, visceral, can't-catch-your-breath screaming. When they finally finished, the standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. People were yelling for more. The club owner was standing at the back of the room, grinning. Backstage, Dean was breathing hard.
His borrowed tuxedo was drenched in sweat. Jerry was bouncing around like he'd been electrocuted. The club owner, a guy named Morris Clayman who had connections to the Cleveland mob, grabbed both of them. "Whatever the hell that was, do it again tomorrow night. Same time. I'll pay you both double. I'll book you for another month if you keep doing it." Dean looked at Jerry. Jerry grinned that manic grin. "So, what do you say, Pally? Want to be a team?" Dean Martin had spent 7 years trying to be the next Sinatra. Serious, smooth, sophisticated, a solo act. In 15 minutes, Jerry Lewis had shown him he could be something different, something new, something nobody had seen before. The smooth singer and the manic comedian, the straight man and the wild man. Oil and water that somehow mixed into something explosive. "Yeah," Dean said. "Let's try it for a month, see what happens." That was February 1946. By March, they were Martin and Lewis, booked solid across Ohio. By July, they were playing New York. By 1948, they had a national radio show. By 1949, they were in movies. By 1951, they were the biggest comedy team in America, making $25,000 a week, which was more money than Dean had ever imagined. All because Dean Martin stopped taking himself seriously, because he said yes to chaos, because a 19-year-old kid with a busboy's tray showed him that being professional wasn't the same as being successful. But here's what most people don't know about the story. Martin and Lewis lasted 10 years, 10 incredible, exhausting, ultimately destructive years. By 1956, they hated each other. Dean felt like Jerry's sidekick, the straight man who never got credit. Jerry felt like Dean didn't appreciate him, didn't work hard enough, coasted on his looks and voice while Jerry did all the heavy lifting. They split up in July 1956, badly, angry, publicly. They didn't speak for 20 years. Martin became a solo act again, but different this time. He took what he'd learned from Jerry, the looseness, the fun, the willingness not to take himself seriously, and built a solo career that eclipsed what he'd done with Jerry. The Dean Martin Show, the Rat Pack, movies, records. He became the coolest man in America.
But he never forgot Jerry. Never stopped feeling the complicated mix of gratitude and resentment that comes from knowing someone changed your life, but also made your life miserable. In 1976, their friend Frank Sinatra decided to do something about it. Frank was hosting the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon, Jerry's charity event that he'd been doing for years. Frank called Dean and asked him to appear. Dean said yes. What he didn't know was that Jerry would be there. Frank had set it up without telling either of them. Dean walked out on stage. The audience went quiet. Then Jerry walked out from the other side. They saw each other for the first time in 20 years. The audience held its breath. Dean smiled, that same easy smile from 1946. "So, you still working as a busboy, or did you get promoted?" Jerry laughed, that same manic energy. A little older, a little tired, but still there. "Yeah, and you're still singing too slow, Pally." The audience exploded. They hugged. It wasn't perfect. They didn't become best friends again. They never worked together again. But they found peace, because they both understood something that night in Cleveland taught them. Success isn't about being perfect. It's not about having a plan and sticking to it no matter what. It's about being willing to take risks, to be vulnerable, to let someone else make you better than you could be alone. Dean Martin walked onto that stage in February 1946 expecting to be a solo singer. He walked off as half of the biggest comedy team in America, not because he had a plan, but because he was willing to let a 19-year-old kid with a busboy's tray change his plan. That's the real lesson. The best things in life, the partnerships, the breakthroughs, the moments that define us, they almost never happen according to plan. They happen when we're desperate enough or brave enough or crazy enough to say yes to something that makes no sense.
Dean Martin had $11 in his pocket that night, a borrowed tuxedo, and 90 seconds to decide if he was going to play it safe one more time or take a chance on something ridiculous. He took the chance, and it changed everything. Even if that chaos came from a 19-year-old kid who wouldn't stop talking and had no business being on stage during someone else's set. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let someone ruin your plan, because their chaos might be exactly what you need.